Welcome to Birds of a Feather. I'm Sarah and I've got an exciting new laser project for the xTool P2 Co2 Laser that I've been dying to try, and it involves felt. These are all the different colors of felt I've got. I don't know that I'll use them all. This is my test piece. So I'm going to be doing an abstract art piece made of felt. And we found these doors at the curb. That's how it looked before, and we've painted it this pretty lilac color. So we're going to be displaying our abstract art right on the surface of this door. And we're going to be using kerf to get precise cutting here. So if that interests you, stay tuned.
Color outside the lines.
I'm here in Procreate drawing my abstract artwork, and what I discovered when I moved on to the next step was that these solid lines, like in the mouth, the nose, the eyes, they don't center line trace very well. So what I'm having to do, and I'm going to show you this tip, what I'm having to do is retrace my artwork in just the outline of those spots so that I can center line trace around those things. So with that done, that's how my artwork is looking now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to the wrench here, I'm going to share it as a PNG and export it. Then I'll save it, and now we can move on to the next steps. So I'm going to show you how to center line traces and turn it into vector artwork for the next steps ahead. Here we are in Inkscape, and we're going to do a centerline tracing on this piece of artwork here to turn it into a vector. So we want to select it, then we're going to go into Path, Trace Bitmap, then we're going to come over here to the panel, and we have centerline tracing selected here. We're going to apply it, and it won't look like anything happens until you drag it away. So in order to tell which one is which, sometimes you can't really tell, just zoom in and you can see that these lines are perfectly smooth and not pixelated. Now, the one drawback about doing a centerline tracing is that sometimes these lines don't meet here, and they will have to be closed paths, so you're going to want to move the nodes so that they intersect the paths. Now the other thing is that these lines might not be perfectly straight, so adjust that too. Just go ahead and adjust until you're happy, and do make sure that all these paths intersect. I initially wanted to do this so that I could use the Shape Builder tool in Illustrator to color them later, but as you'll see, as diligent as I was about connecting the end nodes to a path, it didn't close my shapes, and I had to pivot with another solution. Now you can also delete a node to straighten things out. The best thing to do is to delete all the nodes in the middle, and then everything will fall into a straight line between the two remaining nodes. Just continue to finesse until you're happy, and when you are, you can go ahead and delete your original here. Just select it and hit your delete key. Then drag this one back onto the canvas. Once you're happy with how it's looking, we're going to export it as an SVG. I'm going to choose plain SVG and go ahead and export. Now the next step is to take it into Illustrator, where we're going to colorize it and break it up into their respective pieces. I'm opening up a new file here. I'm going to click OK. And now I'm going to go File, Place. Sizing the artwork using the Transform panel to fit the panel in the middle of the door that you saw earlier. There, so we've got it sized. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create the artboard to the same size. The shortcut to click into the artboard is Shift and O. And then I'm just going to go up here and change the width and the height to 11 by 10.25. As you can see, it fits perfect.
The next steps are going to allow me to break apart all these pieces into the respective colors of felt. But before I do anything, I'm going to select this and I'm going to make a copy. And I'll drag it off to the side. That'll be just in case. Because we used Inkscape to do the center line trace, for some reason I can't use my shape builder tool on here, and I can't find the paths to close. For all intents and purposes, when I zoom in, all my paths look like they're closed here, and yet they're not. So I'm going to have to think of another way to do this.
So what I'm going to try is live paint.
I'll select everything. I'm going to make it a compound path, which is Control 8. You can see here in the left hand corner, it's now a compound path. I'm going to hit K on my keyboard, or you could actually go into the live paint bucket over here, but K will bring it up. When you hover over, it says click to make a live paint group, so I'm going to do that. And now I can go ahead and color the pieces. They're all separated exactly as I wanted. So I'll come over here to my swatch panel and I'll start with red. Let's just make this a little bigger. So I'm going to color all the pieces that I want red. Now I'll select another color. Let's go for orange. So I'm going to continue doing this, and meet me back here and we're going to separate out the pieces. I'll show you what to do next. Once all the sections are filled with their respective colors, I'm going to come up to my selection tool, then I'm going to go Object, Expand, I'm going to click OK. Now I'll come back to Object and we'll ungroup it. Now I'm going to be able, I'll just minimize this a little bit. Now I'm going to be able to grab the lines and drag them away. Let's try ungrouping one more time, because that obviously didn't work. Now let's see if we can drag it away. Nope. If you find that you can't drag away your lines, there's a workaround for that. All you have to do is click on one of them, come up to Select, Same, Appearance. That will select everything. Now you can drag it away. You've got all your lines separated and you're left with the original colored work here. Now what we have to do is separate these into colors. So let's just minimize this. So we're going to use the same trick. We're going to go Select, Same, Appearance, and that'll allow you to drag all your red pieces onto the canvas below. From here, we're going to want to stack these together, and you want to pack them in fairly tight because you don't want to be wasting material. So I'm going to go ahead and do that with every color here, and again I'll just show you one more time. Select, Same, Appearance. We're going to drag it down, and then I'm going to move it in tight. So meet me back here and I'll show you next steps as soon as I've finished separating out all these colors and bringing them down onto the canvas here. Now that I have my final groupings, I'm going to select everything and I want to add a stroke. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to choose black. If I zoom in, you can see everything now has a black stroke around it. But I don't want to stop there. I also want to add some kerf, because when you cut with the laser cutter, you're going to be removing just a thin piece of material between each of these pieces, and I want to ensure that these pieces fit tight as they did when I had the artwork drawn.
Now's a good time to explain to you how to figure out what your kerf is. So you're going to take your felt and you're going to cut a 1-inch square. Now we're going to take it out of the machine and we have to measure it with our calipers.
To figure out our kerf, we're going to use our electronic calipers, and we started with a 1-inch square, and now we've got 0.998. So let's just put that down and get out the calculator. We're going to take 0.998, we're going to subtract our original 1-inch square, and that gives us 0.002. Now, because every piece has 2 sides, we're going to divide this in half. So divide by 2, that gives you 0.001. So 0.001 is the amount of kerf that we're going to add onto each and every piece of felt that we cut. And it's going to fit back together as tight as it was when we drew it. So once again, I'm going to select everything. I'm going to go Object, Path, Offset Path, and I'm going to add my kerf amount, which turns out to be 0.001. I'll OK that, but before I deselect anything, I'm going to come over to the stroke, and let's choose a color that I'll be able to see on all these pieces. I'll choose yellow. So now when I zoom in, you can't really see it, but I've got a yellow path and a black path. What you want to do is you want to click on the black and delete that. That leaves the yellow, so you know you've got your kerf stroke there. So we have to do this with each and every piece. You're going to highlight the black and delete it. If you accidentally delete the wrong one, just do a Control-Z to take you back and reselect.
You can make this step super fast by going to Select, Same, and then Stroke Color, and then just hit your Delete key and they'll be done all at once.
Once that's done, I'm going to select everything again, and I'm going to give everything a consistent black stroke, but not until I finish this step. So I'm going to do this off camera, and when we're back, I believe we're going to be ready to print. Oh, the only one last thing that I want to do is I'm going to take my text tool and I'm going to type all the colors, because I found that when I did my test and I took it into the xTool XES software, I lost the colors here. So just so that I can keep track of what is what, I'm going to type the colors so that I can identify them and print them on the respective colors of felt. There is one thing that I forgot that I will show you when we're back. So before we print, I do want to select everything, put it onto a new canvas, and save it as an SVG. So we'll do that when I'm back, so I'll meet you right back here. We're in the home stretch, everything's on the artboard. I'm going to select it. I'm going to change the outline all to black because we want to cut this on our laser.
Black is the color that I use to identify the cut function on my laser.
As you can see, the outline is there, everything's black. I'm going to select all of this. I'm going to open up a new file. Make sure that everything's on the artboard. What I want to do is I want to make sure that everything is a compound path. So I'm going to go Control-8. As you can see here in the left-hand corner, it's compound now. Now I'm going to do Control-G to group it. Now I can move everything around as a group so that when I get it into the xTool XES software, I can just grab each individual color and print it, or rather cut it, I guess. So I'm going to go ahead and do that with every single grouping here. I'm going to create a compound path, Control-8 and Control-G. I'll go through each and every one of these and do the same thing. Just make sure you have everything selected. Zoom in if you have to.
Now we're going to move all of the color names right beside the respective colors so we can tell what's what once we get it into the XCS software. You won't be able to see the colors because it just won't register. So this is the best way to differentiate between which color felt you're going to be cutting.
Our final step is to save this as an SVG. So I'll go File, Save As. I'm going to choose SVG. Let's give it a title. I'm going to keep all these defaults. I've got SVG 1.1, I've got 4 decimal places, and I'm embedding it. It does make the file a little bit bigger, but I'm going to opt to do that. I'll just OK this. And now we're ready to print on our xTool P2 CO2 Laser. I'm so excited to try this, guys. So let's move to the studio and get this cut.
I'm cutting the pieces of felt with this rotary cutter here.
And this is great. It's a safety cutter. It doesn't engage until you press it down. So I'm just going to roll along. Here's the rainbow of colors we're going to be working with. Yellow, red, camel, charcoal, white, orange. Yellow again, I guess I cut it twice. Oh no, that's lime green. Blue, brown, green, that's a sort of moss green. Navy pink, and there's a lighter gray. I've got my first piece of felt set up in the P2, and I'm using these magnetic clips to hold it down. You want it to be really flat against the honeycomb here, because otherwise it's not going to cut properly. So I'm likely going to cut in the middle because I still have curl against the edges here, and I don't have any more of these clips. So just to be safe, I am going to cut it in the middle. Let's go over to the XCS software and get this set up.
We're now importing the image into the XCS software, and we're getting this message that the image is too large to be displayed on the canvas. In this case, we don't want to scale it because we've already sized it. So you want to ignore that. So select No, Display in the original size. Now we have everything on the canvas to size. So we're going to print one at a time. We want to drag everything off of the canvas and bring it back one at a time. So select everything, drag it off to the left, and now we're going to start with red. So we're going to select that and we're going to bring it back onto the canvas. Now we can connect our device and we can further position it onto our felt. Now we're going to drag our artwork right onto the felt, and with the artwork still selected, we're going to give it a cut function. So over on the right hand side under Processing Type, you're going to click Cut, and then I'm going to go into Manual Setting. I've already set up my manual setting, so I'm going to select Felt Abstract Art here, and it's going to automatically generate my power and speed. So I've got a power of 5 and a speed of 10. Now if I didn't position my artwork right in the middle, you could use the close camera view to position it more precisely, but because my felt is somewhat curled, I'm just going to leave it in the middle, so I don't actually need the camera view right here. I'm just showing you that you can use it and zoom right in and position it with precise detail. Now we can set our thickness. So we're going to deselect the artwork and we're going to type in our thickness. I have a thickness of 0.096, but in order to type it in, you have to put a 0.096. Otherwise it doesn't accept it for some reason. So be sure you pop in that 0 before the decimal point. Now you're ready to hit that green process button at the lower right corner, which will bring up your preview screen. Click on Start and let's go see what happens on our P2.
So we're ready to start. We're going to press the button. Let's see how it did.
As you can see, it looks pretty good, but it didn't cut all the way through, so I'm gonna have to adjust my settings. I didn't do it yet, but right after the orange piece, I did decide that there needed to be just a little bit more power. Once the processing is complete, you're going to click on OK. Then that's going to take you back to your previous screen. Now what you can do is zoom out, and you're going to take your previous artwork right off, drag it far over to the left so you can't confuse it with the pieces that you're going to be working with. Now you're ready to move your next piece onto the canvas. So our next one is going to be orange. I'm going to go and put the felt into the machine, and then we're going to drag it back onto the canvas and refresh the screen. For this one, I'm going to use the Capture Close View button so that I can zoom right in and not waste material. I can see precisely where I'm going to be putting it onto the felt. When you hold down your control key and you swipe with your mouse, you'll be able to zoom right in and see what you're doing. Then you can move it as you see fit. I can nudge it over just a little closer to the edge. With the artwork selected, once again, I'm going to choose my cut function. I'm going to go into the manual setting, and I'm going to choose my already pre-established felt abstract art settings. I'm going to double check the thickness, and then I can go ahead and process and cut this one too. Second color, ready to cut. Now that this one is complete, you can see that it took 2 minutes 59 seconds for that piece. So we've got 10 more to go. First 2 pieces are cut. I can't wait to get the rest done. It's so cool. Since it's taking some effort to pull it out, and I do have some intricate cuts coming up, I am going to increase the power on my next color. When I go into my cut settings for the camel color felt, I'm going to change the actual power. So I'm going to bump it up to 6, and I'm going to leave the speed as 10. Once I determine that it's the sweet spot for cutting this felt, I'm going to go ahead and save those settings on the next color. As you can see, increasing the power by just 1 makes a huge difference. It's so much easier to lift the pieces out. My recommendation for cutting felt from a roll is to cut it the day before and then put it under some weight so that it's perfectly flat when you come to cut it, because any little dip or pucker in the fabric itself is going to affect the way it cuts. The settings that I initially started with were perfect when I had a flat piece, so keep that in mind. Last piece to be cut. We've got all these cut already. The first thing I'll do is separate all these colors and pop them into a tray. So let's just take them out. Now they do still tend to stick because the laser does melt them. So you might have a little bit of resistance getting them out. And if you do, you can just take a sharp X-Acto, which I'll get. Any stubborn pieces you can just cut away. And it isn't that the laser didn't cut through, it's just that it tends to melt and then they just stick back together. With synthetic felt, you will find that some of these bits do melt together, creating tabs. So if you just run your X-Acto knife along the seam here, it will break those tabs. Some colors I find do melt together more than others for some reason. Now you have to be especially careful around here, and these are the parts that do tend to melt together more because they are finer detail and the beam is closer, so it does tend to melt the felt. So you just have to be more careful around these finer details. So this is the really fiddly bit, but I don't think a higher power on the laser would really help this. Always do your own testing and try it out on your own material, and perhaps you'll prove me wrong. I think you'd still get some of this fusing together, just because it is somewhat like a plastic. So it's literally just a few threads that are hanging on here, and
making life just a little bit difficult. My knife here is probably a little bit too dull. I should have a sharp blade, and then this would come out very easily. There, finally, we've got our piece. I've got everything separated now into the respective colors, and I'm starting to piece it together, and they just pop right together, so I guess that kerf worked. It's like a big jigsaw puzzle.
Last step is assembly, and for that we're using this 3M adhesive double-sided tape.
I'm doing a little test with this 3M 467 MP, and it doesn't really work on the felt. Now it could be because this is an old piece, but I don't want to risk it on my other piece. So I'm going to have to find another way to glue it down to my cabinet. This just won't release. So, not a great idea.
What I end up doing is sticking it down to a backing with Aleene's Turbo Tacky glue, and that really did the trick. I just had to weigh it down and do it piece by piece, and it worked out perfectly. Notice too that I'm using these 90-degree rulers, and they are perfect for keeping everything square. So let's get on to the reveal. Here's a reminder of the door before we upcycled it, and here it is now. You can find the full tutorial over at birdsofafeather.ca, and don't forget to like, share, and follow right here. Want more unique crafts and DIYs? Be sure to watch another video.